We're on the eve of another attempt to locate the Invincible, flagship of the First Navy of the Republic of Texas. We first started looking in 1984, so we're overdue. In the morning, we'll be leaving aboard the Santa Maria, a 1937 antique shrimp boat owned by the Galveston Historical Foundation. The high technology will be provided by Innovatum, which will do surveys of the actual targets we have from a previous survey from Marine Magnetics. The Galveston Sheriff's Department dive team will be accompanying us, as they have been assisting in this project for some time now, and possibly will dive on targets. But what we hope to get tomorrow is an image of the iron that's below the surface that's accounting for the anomalies. Now, we've been researching this for years, and we searched from 84 to really 97 before we realized, having checked out many of the shipwrecks that we located in that area, that the Invincible wasn't where we were looking. We did more research, and we've decided that we're in the proper high probability area now, so I think we've got a good chance of success. The Invincible was purchased in Baltimore by the Republic of Texas, along with 3 other ships that composed the First Navy of the Republic of Texas. She came on duty January 1st, 1835, so before the Battle of the Alamo and San Jacinto. Her immediate task was to find the Montezuma, which was the largest warship in the Americas, British-made warship sold to Santa Ana. She searched and couldn't find her. Finally, she found the Montezuma at the mouth of the Rio Grande, where she was blockading her own port to keep news of the invasion from coming out. This was a large warship, the largest warship in the Mexican Navy. And they finally found the Montezuma blockading the entrance to the Rio Grande, where the Montezuma was trying to keep news of the invasion from coming out. The Montezuma was to deliver 2,000 soldiers and supplies to Santa Ana. The Invincible defeated the Montezuma, rendered it useless, thereby stopping Santa Ana's reinforcements from arriving. At that same battle, the Invincible captured a ship with supplies for Santa Ana, and a sister ship in the Texas Navy, the Liberty, also captured another ship with supplies for Santa Ana. They delivered those supplies to Sam Houston just prior to the Battle of San Jacinto. At the same time, privateers had been issued letters of marque. These were all the merchant ships in Texas. They all then carried cannon. Privateers delivered the Twin Sisters a day before the Battle of San Jacinto. Because Sam Houston got all these supplies, all this armory, his men really were in such good spirits that they really forced him to fight the Battle of San Jacinto. He didn't want to fight. He really just wanted to lead the troops to the border, Louisiana border, where the U.S. military was ready to engage Santa Ana. That was his objective. But he had to fight because the Navy brought him all these supplies while preventing his reinforcements from reaching Galveston. You know the Battle of San Jacinto? Well, after that, the war continued. And even though we sent Santa Ana to Washington, Santa Ana was taken aboard the Invincible for a period of time to protect his life because the Texans in the immediate area wanted to hang him. But Sam Houston sent him to Washington, where he stayed for a year or two before he went back to Mexico, and eventually he regained control of Mexico. But in the meantime, the war never stopped. And the Mexican Navy began a blockade of Texas ports. The Texas Navy became depleted. The Liberty was captured by creditors in New Orleans, not allowed to leave. The Independence was literally captured by the Mexican Navy, and it has a wonderful story over the next 8 years. And the Invincible, the Brutus, were then the only 2 ships left in the Navy. And they decided, against the orders of Sam Houston, to go to sea to engage the enemy rather than stay in port, as Sam Houston, the President of the Republic, now wanted them to. The Secretary of Navy, S. Rhodes Fisher, agreed with his captains, resigned his position as Secretary of Navy temporarily, and boarded the Invincible as a volunteer. He set sail to New Orleans, but failing to find any Mexican ships. Sailing in and out of New Orleans, they headed to Isla Mujeres. Isla Mujeres was found to be of their liking, and they claimed it for the Republic of Texas. They stayed, took what they wanted, went over to Cozumel, claimed it for the Republic of Texas, and then proceeded to attack just about every town along the Gulf Coast in Mexico, just to let the Mexican Navy know where they were, to keep the Mexican Navy from bringing up troops for the planned reinvasion of Texas. Finally, they get back to Galveston. This is after they have sent back several ships laden with bounty, booty, everything imaginable. And they get to here in Galveston, they get to the entrance of the bay. The Brutus goes across the bar. The Invincible, with a lot of draft, having captured a lot of things all in her hull, decided to wait till the tide was higher, anchored, and lo and behold, 2 superior Mexican vessels, 2 brigs, approached her. She signaled for the Brutus to come out. The Brutus tried to come out, but shipped her running, ran aground. The men on the Brutus then got on a steamboat, put bales of hay around their steamboat, and came out with their muskets. Of course, all this took a long time. In the meantime, the Invincible slipped her anchor and engaged the 2 Mexican brigs. They fought, according to the captain, all day. It wasn't that long, but it was a long battle. And the Texans actually scored several hits on the Mexican vessels and subsequently claimed victory in the battle. Because what happened was, finally the captain of the Invincible testified that he had fought so long and his cannon were too hot to fire. He tried to lure the 2 larger vessels across the bar. He hit the bar. A storm came up. The Mexican vessels who had incurred damage decided to leave. Fortunately, later that evening, the steamboat was able to get out to the sailors. The captain got off first, because there wasn't many places on this steamboat, took his personal belongings, went on into Galveston. The steamboat came back out the next day. The men were standing in water up to their chest. The boat cracked up in the next 2. They got everyone off safely, but they were not able to recover much. Over the next 48 hours, the storm broke up the ship, and that was 1837. We're due to find her now. Now, if we're lucky enough to find her, what will be left? And we found a lot of shipwrecks looking for the Invincible. But we want the Invincible, and when we find her, we'll know we have her, because she has 1 18-pounder and 8 other cannon of varying sizes from 4 to 9 pounders. That will be the primary evidence that it is the Invincible. Beyond that, we really don't know. It was a wooden ship. It could be buried fairly deeply in the sand and somewhat preserved. We found a period ship, almost the size of the Invincible, in great shape under several feet of sand. We might be lucky, but in any event, we hope to find cannon and identifier and go from there. Now, if we find these cannon or the the ship's bell, some of the cargo that was on there. It will belong to the state of Texas, owned by the General Land Office, which holds all submerged cultural resources for the school children of Texas. In other words, it goes into the permanent education fund of Texas. Of course, it'll be a wonderful opportunity for Texans to learn a part of their history that's absolutely critical and no one knows about. And that is the fact that the war largely was won at sea. And it really was a naval battle that was watched by the world, by the way. The war went on until a truce in 1844 after the Battle of Campeche. This is long after the Invincible. This has been sunk, and a new Texas Navy has been brought on in 1839. It was the most modern Navy in the world for at least 6 months. It consisted of 9 sleek, fast vessels. And that Navy took the battle, took the war to Mexico, blockading Mexican ports and forcing all the war to occur at sea. Now, I say all the war. In 1842, Santa Anna, who was already back in power, captured Bexar, San Antonio twice, and even captured aldermen and took them back and imprisoned them in Mexico. But except for those 2 battles on Texas soil, everything else was fought in Mexican waters. The final culminating battle was the Battle of Campeche, the only time in naval history when sailing ships defeated steam-powered ships. Santa Anna had bought the finest, 2 of the largest, best steam-powered vessels that the Admiralty of Great Britain could provide him, and initially they had British captains. These steam-powered ships under Commodore Moore defeated the Texas Navy, and a truce was finally signed in 1844. In 1845, of course, the U.S. annexed Texas, and the Mexican-American War broke out, the result of which was Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, parts of California all became part of the United States. But for the Texas Navy, the history would have been entirely different.
Hi, my name's Tom Erdling. I'm an underwater archaeologist. I'm working with the Texas Navy Association to look for the wreck of the Texas Navy schooner Invincible, which sank in 1837 just off the entrance to Galveston. Required by law for the state of Texas, there has to be an archaeologist present when surveying and looking at and excavating historic remains, historic culture remains, including shipwrecks. Anything on the ocean floor within the state limits or in rivers is the property of the state of Texas. So I am here in a sense representing as well the state of Texas, the people, to make sure that the archaeology is done right, and to give my perspective as an underwater archaeologist on the ship remains and the history and everything that pertains to the importance of the Invincible.
What do you know about this particular ship that we're looking for?
She was built in 1836 in I think in Baltimore. She was originally built with the intention of being sold for the slave trade to carry slaves from Africa. This, at that time, was kind of a risky thing because the British were trying to interdict that traffic. She ended up being bought by agents for the Texas Republic for the Navy, and sent down here and operated for a couple of years rather effectively in keeping the Mexicans off balance. They went out and attacked Yucatan, did several cruises to essentially bring the fight to the Mexicans.
As an archaeologist, are you familiar with the historical significance?
Yes, yes.
What do you see as the main historical significance of this project?
The Invincible is important for a number of things. Just in the military aspect, that the war probably could not have been won without an effective fleet. The Mexicans could easily have blockaded Galveston. That was prevented by taking the fight to them in what were called Mahanian tactics. Alfred Mahan was an admiral in the late 19th century and laid out principles for naval strategy. And the sailors, the officers of the Texas Navy, understood those instinctively. A fleet sitting in a harbor is no fleet at all. It's not doing any good. They took the fight to the Mexicans. They interdicted their trade. They forced the Mexican Navy to spend its resources looking for them on the high seas. Prevented, just by their presence at sea, the Mexicans from organizing an invasion by sea of Galveston or any part of the coast. The ship itself is important because it was the first people in Galveston to hear about the victory at San Jacinto were the crew of the Invincible as they were anchored in the harbor. For a short time, Santa Anna was held prisoner on the Invincible. The actions that the Invincible and one of the other ships, Brutus, the prizes they captured, carrying military stores to Mexico, much of those stores ended up being used by Santa Anna and the Army of the Republic. So they had a very great importance and effect on the outcome of the war.
Hey, Tom, what is it more important historically or archaeologically?
Well, it's kind of both. Archaeologically, this type of vessel, which was called the Baltimore Clipper, a specific type that had it was developed in Baltimore, mainly around the War of 1812, a little bit before. These were ships that, compared to the Invincible, were maybe a little bit shallower in draft, maybe a little bit smaller, but they carried a large sail area. They were known for their speed. They were used primarily as privateers. A little bit later, they became a little bit bigger as the need for privateers disappeared after the war, but they started being used in the slave trade because they were fairly fast still and could elude pursuers. So the importance archaeologically is that, as far as we know, there's only been one other example of a Baltimore Clipper that's been excavated archaeologically. So we don't know a lot about this particular ship type, about how it was put together. We do have lines plans that were taken off in the 19th century, ships captured by the British Navy, other builders that had lines plans. So they know what they look like, but again, with only one other example excavated, we're interested to have another and take a look and see what we can find.